who is on the payroll of Pima County as an attorney in the public defender's office, runs a group called Derechos Humanos, human rights. And she has huge banners. And if you go on to her website, Derechos Humanos, you will see a graphic of a man that appears to be peering over a barbed wire fence as if it's the border. But I analyzed the graphic, and what appears to be a map of Mexico isn't a map of Mexico at all. It's a map of Mexico combined with the southwestern United States, what they call Aztlán. So this high official in Pima County, an attorney who has been on the payroll for more than a decade and is one of the most outspoken leaders of the La Raza movement, and was there when they took over the school board last week, cheering them on, is works for the government of Mexico, is paid by the people of Pima County, and is advocating the takeover of the American Southwest by Mexico and reversing the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, which was signed in 1848. Now, I don't think it took much for me to predict this kind of thing when these people are so out front about it.
And now we're hearing, oh, it's democratic, it's loving and liberal, secession is good. When it's a La Reconquistas, it's cute, a 51st state. I mean, they're really moving ahead with this right now. Break down this latest development. Who's behind that?
Well, the latest development is what we call the Baja Arizona, right? This is the people of Pima County. Exactly who was behind it, I have an idea, is Isabel Garcia. She would be the leader of this movement. She has been for years. 9 years ago, I wrote a letter to the administrator of Pima County demanding that she be fired because of her subversive efforts. If you go on AmericanPatrol.com and search for Isabel Garcia, you will see 9 years of documentation of us tracking this woman, okay, and everything that she does. So it is just like California when Mario Obledo, co-founder of MALDEF, by the way, which was financed by the Ford Foundation, we have him on tape on a radio station in California saying that California is going to be a Hispanic state and anyone who doesn't like it should leave, okay? Now, I have lots of stuff like that, and I had for years before I produced Conquest of Aztlán. But what surprises people when they hear me say these things, well, how can you say that? Well, I can say it because they say it. And you're surprised because you've never heard it before, because the mainstream media won't repeat it.
And by the way, all over the country, the stations are called The Invasion, La Infosora, La Reconquista. Hundreds of billboards, as you know, went up in L.A. It said Los Angeles, California, crossed out Mexico. It's all very funny. Why would anyone want to make the Southwest Mexico where you can't have private property unless you're an insider? You can't own guns. The police pull you over and demand money. I mean, it's just horribly corrupt. It's an absolute hellhole. And we have the major corporations, our media, pushing this and trying to make all Hispanics, Puerto Ricans, Mexicans that want to be free, Brazilians, Venezuelans, they're told, you better get with the program. I mean, this is so crazy.
Well, this may sound strange to a lot of people, but Mexicans are very nationalistic. They love their country, and they're very nationalistic. And you know one of the reasons they are? You know, they've never had immigration. And you say, Glenn, what would you mean by that? Well, they're very insular because they've never learned to try to get along with everyone.
Oh, they don't let anybody in. And,
no.
and I mean, that's the big... You got money. It's been very hard until recently. For those that don't know, it's even admitted in the New York Times, Mexico puts you in a forced labor camp for 1 year if you're caught.
But they've taken polls, in Mexico and asked them, Is it illegal to cross the border? No. They stole that land from us. And more than half of Mexicans look upon us as an enemy. But a large percentage believes that the Southwest was stolen from them, and they have every right to take it back. And that's what they're taught in their schools. And that's what they're now being taught in our schools. And that was the incredible thing about this. The state of Arizona passed a law that said, you can no longer make mandatory courses in La Raza. They have to be electives in our high schools. Well, they had to.
Sir, when I was in high school 20 years ago, it was teachers with relish, by the way, white teachers, telling me how bad America was and how great it was going to be when Mexico took over America. And it's this, America's committing suicide. And,
no question.
And it is a blessed sacrament of Americans, white, black, Hispanic, to destroy ourselves, to be robbed by foreign banks, to be the idiots of the world, to finance all these illegal wars. And, I mean, if you go to Mexico now, I mean, the State Department says it's one of the most dangerous countries on earth. It is a hellish pit. They finally had to admit what you've documented for decades. Americans are targeted, especially whites. But the racial murder of whites is a sacrament. Whites deserve to die, and whites want to die. Many white liberals believe it's good. And, I mean, these are very sick, self-destructive people. And America probably will fall. It won't fall to Mexico. It'll just fall into the lawless anarchy and squalor and sewage running down the streets and chickens running around everywhere. And that's what America wants. It's what we're going to get, Glenn.
Well, California is about to collapse. California is the illegal immigration state. It is about to collapse. Arizona is fighting back. It passed SB 1070, and it also recently passed a law that allows the state to build its own fence on the border. And by the way,
and I'll guarantee you, if you put it on the tax forms, the state tax forms, if people want to give more money for only that program, people will put money on it.
Well, you can go online and donate to the fence.
Absolutely.
You can go on. It's called keepazsafe.com. It is an official state of Arizona website, which I have donated to.
Well, here's what's so sick, Glenn. I could care less what color you are. I could care less. But I shouldn't even have to sit here and say that. I'm not the one with groups called Raza. I'm not the one with school books saying the Southwest belongs to Mexico, and there was hardly anybody in the Southwest, desert wasteland, a few missions. Mexico kept starting wars with the United States and losing them. Sorry, their military was so corrupt that their soldiers would fight, but their generals would cut and run. And I mean, who would want... I mean, they're running up here. America isn't perfect, but they're running up here because there's some private property, some Second Amendment, some dignity. Our cops, the feds are trying to corrupt them, but the average cop in America, it's very rare to have cops just pull you over and demand money.
Well, you're absolutely right. I'm on the Mexican border right now. I'm looking into Mexico. I fly the border. American Border Patrol surveys the border. We're called America's Eyes on the Border. And I support keepazsafe.com because the state of Arizona is going to do some work. Now, let me tell you something, and you haven't heard this before, but we've been working on technology on the border for 9 years. We were the first to use UAVs and so forth. Last year, we stumbled upon and discovered a way to secure the border, to detect everybody who crosses the border and count them at a fraction of the cost of what the Boeing has been doing. And the state of Arizona has seen a demonstration of this, and we hope that maybe if they are able to come up with the funding at the state level, we hope to convince them to test this out. Now, I have put a half mile of what I call the sonic barrier on our ranch right here along the border. You cannot get past it. You can't tiptoe past it. It'll detect ultralights. It'll detect tunnels. It does the whole thing.
All right, stay there. But the fact that Arizona, with black, white, Hispanic, Asian Americans are standing up to the crime wave, the tyranny, the murder, the death, the bedlam, that's now drawing out the La Reconquistas and the Ford Foundation to try this secession movement. Next, they're going to start getting violent, which will really show very simple. The Fortune 500 generally, but definitely the Fortune 100, financed, created this whole liberation theology. There was a little bit of this going on in Mexico before, because Mexico has been nationalistic. That's not a negative overall. And it's been hyped, but it's force-fed here in the U.S. It's extremely aggressive, and it's coming to a head to the point that these groups are now trying to break off part of the U.S. to basically be a little enclave of Mexico. And you try to talk to these people, and they are just openly, you're evil because you're white. And I'm like, well, why don't we just be friends? They're like, no. And I've been to some of these events here in Austin. You know, they have their, big parades and things. And the fact is, most Hispanics I know aren't into this, but the people leading, the big official Mexican, day parades and things, it is a race meeting. And you go out there, and it's wrong. And the point is, the mega corporations, Glenn, want everybody fighting with each other. From your decades of research, why are the big corporations trying to get everybody fighting with each other? Why are they promoting these different movements?
What's movement? They don't want the nation state, because it gets in the way of their growth. But 15 years ago, Alex, I told a meeting in Los Angeles, you won't know you're being invaded until you try to stop it. The reason that we're seeing this reaction in Arizona is because the state of Arizona is standing up and passing laws to defend itself. The reason you don't see this kind of thing in California is that their politicians are capitulating. They are surrendering every day, right and left. So you don't see this backlash because they are taking over California, and they're in the process of completing that takeover. The reason you're seeing this in Arizona is that the state of Arizona is resisting. That's the only
And now as
reason.
California openly collapses with a 33% unemployment rate, we are going to have to bail them out via the federal government, and the federal government openly wants this because they're run by globalist traders.
Yeah, but the House of Representatives, run by Republicans, is not going to allow it. And that is a major struggle that you should watch, everybody should watch, because California is bankrupt. And
all right, let me ask you this then. Let me ask you this.
Illegal aliens.
Let me ask you this. You've had an incredible crystal ball, Glenn. Give us the lay of the battlefield right now and what you're predicting is going to happen next.
Well, the battlefield is right now in Arizona because Arizona is resisting. And by the way, I'm always impressed when I go on your show. The hits on our site just quadruple. So we've got a lot of people looking at AmericanPatrol.com right now. And you'll notice at the top it says Arizona, help Arizona build the border fence. The state of Arizona and the governor signed a law to allow them to take private donations to defend themselves against this invasion. And they can build a fence and they can do other things. And so I'm encouraged. It's already raised $1.5 billion, 34.
No, this is showing the power. This is showing the power of the people. But look, Mexico is a failed narco-terrorist state.
Right.
Mexico has a complete border with Guatemala and puts people in forced labor for a year. How can Mexico have some of the most draconian immigration laws in the world, but then lecture us when we have the most wide-open system in the world?
Reverse that they want to move their people north. It's all in my video. They tell you they are expanding their territory by migration. Do you want the direct quote of
yeah, stay there. We'll do 5 more minutes with you. Then we got Vincent Bugliosi joining us. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, final little 5-minute segment with Glenn Spencer, who for decades has been chronicling what's happening. Speaking with Glenn Spencer, we now have the move to break off part of southern Arizona and make it a pro-open border enclave of Mexico. And we have basically Mexican government minions in there in the Tucson government pushing this. The system is panicking. The mega corporations want open borders. Mexico wants to export its revolution into the U.S. as a steam valve instead of their people ever getting freedom over the incredibly corrupt oligarchy they've got. Glenn Spencer, what is the official policy of the Mexican government?
All right, here is the Mexican president. This is about 11 seconds. Speaking to the National Council of La Raza in 1997, this is the deal. Now listen to this. I have proudly affirmed that the Mexican nation